And we are live for episode 84. Um, and a few hours ago, my head nearly exploded at a new concept. I'm Thomas.
I'm Shaggy. Hey, everybody.
Um, la- Last episode, we kind of touched upon the possibility of looking at kind of programming and with the Raspberry Pi and how Python's good to start out with for beginners. And I kind of been doing that with uh, learn Python the hard way. And the way that they go about it is they actually make you Zed Shaw makes you type everything in, and there are some exercises which he'll make you kind of look it up and research it. The pound sign, for example, has multiple meanings from the past. So in later exercises, chances are I'm going to be forced to look things up, because his idea is you don't want to rely on one source. You want to be able to find other sources of information too to help you out. My background is limited in programming. I left it in college because, frankly, I didn't have the patience for it at the time. My background is Visual Basic 6, some of the modern incarnations of it through the .NET framework, a little bit of Java. That's what basically killed my patience for a while. Going from an all-encompassing environment where you draw controls on the screen, double-click, start coding, and then in some cases code, external modules and things like that too. Boom, here's a text editor. You're going to go to the command prompt, try to compile this thing, and good luck to you. So I tried doing that. What I've learned so far is how to print messages, which is standard. How you can actually code within Python itself, which is kind of cool.
Personally, I hate it. I would rather type all my stuff into a text file and then just run the command into the command line and just run it. But I mean, in your case, it shouldn't be too difficult, because it's not like with Java. You have to make sure that you have everything typed a specific way. I mean, it's the same with Python. Python can be really, really picky when it comes to formatting for its syntax. But that might just be my background coming out, that I'd rather just type everything in a text file. I was actually just playing with it a little bit ago. I went in a command line, and if you type Python, it brings up its interpreter, and then you can type in commands or copy and paste if you want to, and do things that way. But I'd rather just type it into a text file and run it all at once.
I experimented with doing the calculations from the third exercise, some of the concepts of it in there, and it gave the results readily, which was kind of cool. One thing I did notice is, you're right, it is very picky. Let's say you decide you want to print a message on the screen. You cannot capitalize print. You'll get a syntax error.
Yeah, everything is very case sensitive when it comes to programming.
So, and the basic commands, it's mostly lowercase, and I'm like, wow, that is.
The reason for that is because Python comes from a background of C programmers, and if you've ever coded in C, or if you ever see any C code, look it up sometime. It's pretty interesting. It might blow your brain, so be careful. But C syntax and then C standard naming procedures and so on and so forth require you to keep everything lowercase. So like your variables and stuff like that, they're all like you could have an entire line, but it's all lowercase. It makes it really stupid and annoying to read. However, the compiler recognizes that quicker than having different cases in there. So if you have uppercase and lowercase, it actually slows down the compiler. If you have just all lowercase, it's quicker. And trying to do more things in more of a complex way, like a compound statement, or trying to crunch everything into as little code as possible, is very, very good for C programming as well. And Python is designed that way. So it's handy. You have some availability of some of those C library functions in there. A little bit annoying to do it in Python, but they're there.
Oh, and I kind of looked at, I'm looking at exercise 4. Variables. You were not kidding when you said you could declare anything as anything practically. It's just, it's insane. They start with cars equals 100, space underscore n underscore a underscore car equals 4.0, drivers equals 30, passengers equals 90, cars not driven equals cars minus drivers, cars driven equals drivers, and space between words, you have to have an underscore in this case for variables too. I can see this as you said, very powerful, but I also kind of see it as kind of dangerous if you're not careful to a point too.
That's very true. And in the case of what this author or this guy is trying to do is by inserting these underscores into these variables, it makes it seem more like a standard, what most people would interpret a string as. In other words, it's just normal. It's just a bunch of words. That underscore is hard to see. So that can be one thing that you'd have to pay attention to if you're like jumping through some code and stuff like that. See, I was going somewhere with that. Then at the same time, if you try to like squeeze it all without all those spaces, you have to read all that, and then it can get really annoying, especially if it have like 5, 6, 7 different words, all with a lot of letters per word. Then you can have this giant 20 to 30 character long string, which is your variable name that you're trying to figure out. Good luck.
Because like I'm used to declaring something as a basic string or an integer, which is your basic standard number, or if you need something really huge, long, which is very, very rare in some cases, that sort of thing. So it's a little bit different, and one of the strategies that this guy is talking about in terms of debugging is read from the end all the way to the top, the last line to the first line, that sort of thing, to kind of detach yourself from your code so you can see where you're messing up, if you're messing up at all. And some of the things that he's having people do is insert comments and in your own words describe what it's doing. He's teaching people to document what's going on in the coding too, how many pieces of source code have you looked at and go, what the hell are they trying to accomplish, after noticing there's no documentation whatsoever?
Like a lot of, I gotta say this very carefully. A lot of the code that I look through at my job has that same issue. The JavaScript code that I've been messing with is like the opposite end of the spectrum. They went a little too crazy with the documentation, and that was very, very, very vague. And some of the documentation is actually literally word for word copied and pasted to a different method that does something different. But it has the same description, same exact notations and everything from the previous function, which is all grouped together to do one specific task, so that you could call an algorithm.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, documentation, it's hard. It's hard to do right. It really is. And the problem that I have when I'm coding something for myself and for an assignment, I just type away. I don't put any documentation in there because I understand what's going on. And then later on, I can go back and, for the most part, usually I know what's going on. But somebody else can come over and be like, "The fuck?"
Right. Oh, absolutely. And in this particular exercise, one of their study drills is when I wrote this program, the first time I made a mistake, and Python told me about it like this. And basically, he's asking you to explain the error and make sure you use line numbers to explain why. And he also makes you think. I use 4.0 for space in a car, but is it necessary? What happens if it's just 4? Because apparently, if you do 0.0, it's you're doing floating point as opposed to just another number. And I changed a lot of numbers to 0.0, like 45.0 or something like that, and reran the script, and the calculations turned out differently.
Much more precise.
Yep. And the explanation is it doesn't deal with fractions. It drops the fractions unless you specifically use the percent sign to ask for the remainder, which that kind of threw me a little bit at first. It's like, wait, why the hell are you doing this? And then after you explained, after I looked at their explanation and you gave examples, it's basically a shortcut to divide these two numbers, but show the remainder of it.
It can be very, very handy depending on what you're doing too. For example, for what I had to do something, I think this was a couple of weeks ago. I was writing some SQL queries, and for those of you that don't know, SQL is a procedural language, and some of the commands in there aren't case sensitive, which can also screw with you. Until you're trying to a specific database name, that is always case sensitive. Certain things are and certain things aren't. So it's not like a normal strict programming language where everything has to be case. It's super case sensitive, and then go to SQL. It's like, yeah, no. I had to filter out some stuff by using what Thomas was referring to, the percent sign. I had to do it differently in the SQL query, but it's called the modulus operator. And basically what that does is, like he was saying, it's almost like dividing, but only getting the remainder, and it's very quick. And I had to do that to get even numbers versus odd numbers. And the really easiest way to do that is by modding by 2. So, for example, you take 3% 2 in Python, that's going to give you 1. If you take 4% 2, that's going to give you 0, because 4 divided by 2 is 1, or 2. It goes in it twice, evenly. You don't have anything left over. If you did 5, it would actually be 2.5 if you're doing a floating point number. But if you're doing the modulus operator, it'll give you 1, just like if you're doing 3 mod 2, or 3% 2, sorry. So.
And according to Shaw, it's basically, it's the way that the language was designed. But so far, I've looked at it, and I managed to make sure an updated version of Raspbian was installed, and I like the look of it better than previous incarnations of LXDE on it, because that and I had to do some extra options to force HDMI for audio and everything else, but that worked pretty well. Of course, I installed Gedit because multiple tabs has more options for line numbers, indentation, and all of that. As soon as they started describing, Notepad++ or some other editor for OS X, I was like, I better get Gedit, because that'll work a little bit better if I want to work with multiple text files. And of course, I'm able to use the terminal to run Python. you would know more about this at this point than I would. Shaw cautions against using Python 3. He points people towards Python 2. Are more are people getting closer to using Python 3, or is it still a ways off?
As far as I know, I think it's still a ways off. The reason for that is because when Python 2, like between Python 1 and 2, I'm not 100% sure about the differences in terms of the design of the language, but Python 2.7, whatever the latest version is, and then Python 3, if you take like this giant lump of code that was written in Python 2.7 and try to go over and run it in Python 3, it's not going to work. Python 3 has been changed dramatically compared to normal just iterations and version updates and things here and there. They've added features, they've taken some features away. What specific information, I honestly don't know. I just do know that you can't take 2.7 code and throw it into 3 code and expect it to work. I mean, if it's simple things like printing statements and you don't have a lot of stuff going on, it's most likely going to work. But if you have a full-fledged application, you try to run that on Python 3, it's not going to work. I can almost guarantee it, just because of the architectural differences and the changes that they've made to version 3.
And people have asked the guy, when will you recommend using 3? And basically, it's when more and more people are coding towards it, they're not. So I guess it's 3 right now is still a work in progress, I guess.
It's a combination of that, and then also there's a common thing when it comes to like software development and programming. People stress on the fact of why reinvent the wheel. So code reuse is a very, very, very high priority and a very important thing. Like if you're writing something, like if you're writing an app or an application that does it's like some kind of game and it's based off of dice. And you already did some other game that utilized dice. Most likely you had some kind of module that represents that dice object or the idea of a die. So that way, instead of rewriting from scratch, hey, I'm going to make this dice.java file or whatever, you can go back, just literally copy that file over and reuse it without having to type all that extra work and do all that extra work and think about it again. Just use it. Then you don't have to sit there and rethink it and then try to reinvent the wheel. It's a waste of time, really. And when it comes to programming, there's things when you need to focus on, like if you're trying to do something different with this game, you're trying to implement some specific feature, some game mechanic that's different than any other game out there, you need to spend most of your time thinking about that rather than thinking about something that's already been done.
Understood on that one. Same logic as trying to run Visual Basic 6 code in newer versions of VisualBasic.net. There used to be a compatibility thing that checked your code for you, but even that would only do so much from what I understood at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So, then again, .NET introduced more object orientation too, so which was kind of interesting. But so far, it's the whole thing's made me think. Like I said, I found out that the symbol that's now commonly known for hashtags, also used for comments, was also referred to as other things in the past as well, and it's just kind of different contexts, different meanings, and it blew my mind. So I have a feeling I'm going to be doing a lot of web surfing.
Yeah,
because of that.
Sorry, I didn't really mean to interrupt. I just wanted to give you another pointer. The hashtag symbol or the pound symbol, That's for a single line comment. I don't know if you've researched or anything, but you can also do multi-line comments. So in other words, like instead of like constantly putting a hashtag in the front of every line, like if you have 5 lines and you have like this paragraph that you're trying to explain like what this entire file does or what this group of methods do, you could go in and you can type 3 double quotes in a row and then just type whatever, and then like whatever at the end of the last line of that comment, type those 3 in again, and that's a multi-line comment rather than typing a little hashtag for each line.
Okay.
Some work, and you can also put it into a giant block rather than hashtag type, hashtag type, hashtag type. You just do the 3 comments once, and then you type all your crap and then put it at the end again. It's really nice.
Okay, that'll be a future thing I'll use. That does get tedious after a while.
It does, especially like from my perspective. And now that I am a software developer, it'll come in handy.
But exercise 4, I'll keep a lookout for on doing that, because Epiphany has no problem rendering these pages for the most part. Although I may get like transparent background temporarily when the CPU goes above like 30% usage, but it's not hard to get it to do that. So launching the Pi edition of Minecraft, the loading screen spiked the thing 100%. I'm like, oh my. Now I see why they updated it with a faster CPU, because this barely runs a full operating system on it. So I will say that if somebody had enough patience, they could practically use it as a glorified game console and use each SD card as an individual cartridge of sorts. And then I don't know, but I think I'll continue that adventure. Maybe every day, I don't know yet, but at least once a week. Speaking of games, your thoughts on E3, sir?
Oh, I've got so many thoughts on E3. Okay, did we talk about E3 the last time? I think we mentioned Fallout 4, didn't we?
Right, Bethesda saying they had an announcement, and there was that countdown timer, and then after everything got published, boom, there it was, Fallout 4, and people were...
Fallout 4 trailer. I watched the trailer probably 7-8 times that day. I don't know if you guys out there are listening to this. That day, the day of the previous podcast, we were talking, and I was talking about how excited I was for this game. Well, the trailer didn't help any. It just made it worse. And then the announcement yesterday that Bethesda, actually it was on Sunday that they made it. Today, we're recording on a Tuesday. So 2 days ago, they announced a bunch of the different features of the game, kind of the context of the storyline. They didn't spoil anything because it's Bethesda. They're so good about not doing that because they don't want to spoil it. But it's combining some aspects of, in the Fallout universe, there was a giant nuclear disaster which caused a bunch of radiation and fallout. That's where it gets the name. But there was a bunch of vaults built for people to go in underground. Turns out those were all experiments that were supposed to experiment and collect data on the people that went under there instead of saving them from the giant disaster from the Great War, as it's referred to in the Fallout universe, which happened in 2077. And in this new Fallout game, it starts out in 2077. And you play as a character, and you play right as the bombs are dropping. You have to get to a vault and whatnot. But they talked about some of the features in the game and stuff like that. And needless to say, I'm super excited. You'll just have to go look at the trailer and look at the video of all the different features and stuff like that. It takes some things from like what some modders have done for Fallout 3, some of the aspects that Obsidian put into Fallout New Vegas, and then added some new things into the game, which will make it very interesting. And I'm super looking forward to playing it and playing around with all these different things. You can do all kinds of different construction and stuff that hasn't been done in games before. They kind of did that a little bit with an add-on for Skyrim. But overall, my thoughts on E3 are kind of up and down. Nintendo, I guess, from some of the people that I've talked to, and Thomas and I were discussing this before we started the podcast. Nintendo kind of kicked themselves in the butt this year, and they it was more of a flop than anything. Square Enix, I'm like super looking forward to some of the games that they've thrown out there at E3. One of them was already announced a while ago, Kingdom Hearts 3. I'm a big fan of the Kingdom Hearts series. I don't think they released an actual release date, but they did release more footage and stuff like that. They also released the next installation of the Deus Ex series, which I'm super excited for. The story for the last game, which came out in 2011, was really, really good. They have another re-release of Final Fantasy VII, which is fully 3D and everything. They had a trailer for it. I think that was yesterday, because E3 was going all through this weekend, and I think it was also yesterday too, if I'm not mistaken.
Steve Kelly asked me what my thoughts were on it, or basically, hey, you excited? And I give a big old thumbs up. The bad news is I'm afraid I'm going to have to just practically set hundreds of dollars on fire just to get a PlayStation 4, just to enjoy it. Although I'd rather wait until closer to time when they're going to be like, oh, this is when it's going to be released, or just maybe wait and see if they release it on Steam or something, because honestly, with the way audio has advanced on computers now, there is no excuse for not making music basically the same quality on a console as it is on a full-fledged desktop. The MIDI rendition that Eidos Interactive did was just terrible. It made me gag. I'm like, no, why did I put up with it? But I'm like, oh, this is terrible. And then playing it on the PlayStation, it sounded so much different and better. And I'm like, I take it you've encountered that too.
Yeah, even okay, so the reason why I said re-release of a re-release is because Square Enix decided, oh, let's re-release Final Fantasy VII, which they did, I believe, last year sometime. I don't remember. I bought it because I didn't have it on Steam, so now I have it on Steam. I used to play it when I was real little. So that was the re-release of the original game, which was released on the PC back in the day when it first came out, which was around late 90s, early 2000s. I think it was like 98, 99, if I'm not mistaken, when Final Fantasy VII came out. I played it around that time. I know I did, because I played it on the original PlayStation. But now this is a remake, so a reboot of Final Fantasy VII, not a re-release. So it's kind of a re-release, but not. So it's supposed to be fully 3D rendered and like all kinds of crazy stuff. So it looks good. The trailer that I saw looked really, really, really good. So I'm excited for that. Let's see. Who else was really good? Oh, the new Star Wars game is going to be coming out, and DICE and EA were there showing that off, and that looks really, really good. It's Star Wars Battlefront. For those of you that are familiar with the Star Wars Battlefront games, there was a Battlefront and Battlefront 2, which were on the PlayStation and PlayStation 2. I think they might have been both on the PlayStation 2, and they were also on the Xbox, and they had a version of it for the PC. I actually have it. I bought it on this giant bundle from the Humble Bundle a while ago, and it's just, the graphics are terrible, but it's still a fun game. It's showing its age now. It came out in like 2003, 2004, which is when Battlefront 2 came out. So this is a little over 10 years since that last game has come out. Square Enix overall has a lot of crap that they're coming out with. It's not crap; it's good. But they have the Deus Ex game. Bethesda also is redoing Doom. So those of you that played back in the 80s, you can get excited about a game that looks really awesome for a game that was way, way back when, before I was born. Let's see here.
Need for Speed. I've heard of that game.
Oh yeah, that one. I forgot about that.
According to our list that we made there, I used to hear about. I took a basically a glorified IT course after at a VOTEC, which had arrangements with local high schools. After doing 1 year of programming, and the teacher deciding they're going to retire right in the middle of that year, so they had nobody to replace him with. So to that other class I went, and the instructor always talked about playing Need for Speed on his computer. He, I guess, enjoyed the racing games quite a bit. And I guess it was a very good franchise.
Did that look up on your Thomas?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm trying to transfer something to a flash drive.
Oh.
I don't know why it decided to die.
Oh, crud.
I think Windows just took a poop.
Oh.
Everything's still working. I mean,
I can still hear you. So, but Need for Speed. Need for Speed. Pretty good game, from what I heard.
I just got to see the trailer just a little bit ago, and it looks really, really good. I played it. Geez, off and on. Oh, did it come back? Awesome. I played it. I remember when Most Wanted came out for PS2, for the PS2. That game was so awesome. They re-released it on the PC. I managed to download never mind, I won't say that right now. I downloaded a version that wasn't necessarily legal. I did the same thing with Carbon, but I played the crap out of it, and it's really fun. It looks like they're trying to go back to that kind of street racing, customize your car, do all kinds of crazy stuff you really wouldn't be able to do based on physics and stuff like that. So it looks really, really fun. It looks amazing. The graphics are just above and beyond what it was 10 years ago, and even 5 years ago with Shift 2 and Shift 2 Unleashed, which I have Shift 2 Unleashed on Steam, and it's really fun too.
Well,
just above and beyond.
You mentioned downloading, quote unquote, or not, but this was back in the day when you didn't have Steam and didn't have these game-changing entities that cause prices to drop on games and everything else. Phil Wesley of DMG Heist, he kind of commented on E3. He was somewhat dismissive of it, but he did comment that apparently that the PC was basically in his mind the secret winner of this year. And I found that comment to be very, very interesting.
I kind of agree with it to a point. Between the PC and the PS4, I think, Square Enix was really just stabbing Microsoft in the gut this time. And you mentioned just a little bit ago, before we started the podcast, about an image. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen because it's absolutely hilarious. I can't not share my screen right now. You guys are going to have to give me a second. I'll get to it, but you can see it right here. You'll be able to see this if you go on YouTube and watch the podcast. But right here, you can see. I'll blow this up. Not like that. I'll blow this up, but right here, this image. It's It's an image of E3 2015 with Sony's logo on the Buster Sword cutting through an Xbox One, which is eloquently put by this image, and also very hilarious.
Yeah, I saw this circulating on Facebook, and I'm like, oh my. And hat tip to Andrew Ike for sharing that. He's one of my friends on Facebook. I saw it, it's like, oh my. And I've seen that sentiment that, okay, Square Enix has shown all of this. Everybody else can go home now because but right now it's Nintendo. Some people felt there's some of their stuff was lackluster. Microsoft, so Sony. I don't know. It's just some people liked it, some people didn't. Others were like, "Hey, more video games, yay!" So, like, I don't think this is going to sound the death knell of video games as we know it. It's just 2015's kind of, it's kind of another year for games and another year for Nintendo to try to get its act together in terms of getting people excited about things and not making them worry about whether they're going to exist now or in the future and what have you. So
I think Nintendo's problem is that they're holding on. They're holding on to certain things so hard and for so long, which in terms of like Mario and then like a lot of the big name things that you hear that and then you think Nintendo. I mean, it's obvious. They've been together forever, and that's the way it's always going to be. But they haven't really released anything new. Like, they're coming this year. They finally come out with a new Star Fox game, which is good because there's been a lot of fans that have been waiting for that, and it looks good. It looks like they had worked on one originally, and then it got canceled. I forgot what the title of that one was supposed to be, but I think it's similar to what this new one is. But it's, I think that's really the only thing that people can get excited for that Nintendo has brought out. Because other than that, you have another Mario game and another Mario Kart game and another Mario Party game. And it's the same crap. That's why people are getting frustrated. For me, I'm not a big Nintendo fan, so I don't have that big of a problem with it. I always liked Mario, so I can still play a Mario game. But it's not me.
There is a remake of Earthbound, what we call Earthbound Zero. They call it Earthbound Beginnings. Earthbound was this SNES game that was very popular, but in Japan it was called Mother 2. Mother 1 was actually translated to English and everything else, but for some reason Nintendo never released it in the US. Yes, you can find a ROM for it today and download it and play it, but I do remember reading they announced that, so it's okay. So they're revisiting the Earthbound franchise, which I think is good. But there were rumors of Earthbound 64 for the N64, and then all of a sudden, boom, it never materialized. So hopefully they'll come up with something new, because let's face it, Pokemon and Smash Brothers has been basically what's been carrying, maybe some Metroid has been carrying that whole company, at least in the US, for quite some time now. So maybe, just maybe, they'll look at this year as a wake-up call and try something new. But yeah, I'm tempted to look at a PS4. but not until I know for sure when that remake's going to be released. Because they're going to integrate Crisis Core storyline into it somehow and make everything kind of consistent in terms of that.
So that would be nice, especially since I haven't played the Crisis Core game, which was kind of a branch off of the same story. It was kind of like a prequel, if I remember correctly, and followed Sephiroth and Cloud, and how and he plays a different character. I can't remember what his name is.
Zach Fair.
Yeah, and you kind of go through his storyline a little bit, but it does get into the background of why Sephiroth is the way that he is, sort of. I mean, it doesn't get into it 100%. The rest of it's answered by the original game. So,
but you do eventually find out how Zach basically meets his end, which the ending video sequence for that was very, very sad. But yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to that. Maybe by the time they release that, I'll have been able to learn enough Python to write a game for the Pi. I don't know. We'll see how long my patience holds out. Although I am interested with this teaching style of Mr. Zed Shaw, because I've been used to more structured lessons, do this, do that, and that sort of thing, and then use the coding as a template for something else. But I'll see where that goes. You have anything else to add?
Not that I can think of off the top of my head. If you guys have any topics of something that you would like to talk about, definitely shoot us a message on our Facebook page, or you can call us at our number. You'd have to ask Thomas for the number. I never remember it. You can get a hold of us, let us know, because one of the biggest problems that I think that I have when you and I talk before our podcast, some days I just can't think of a topic. Usually because nothing's really been going on, nothing's just really hit my interest, or it's just I don't want to go back to a topic that we've already talked about a couple of times.
Right.
And branch out a little bit. So if there's something that you guys want to hear, let us know by all means. We're definitely interested in doing new things. I know I am. I talked a long time ago about maybe doing a build log of a computer, or walking through how to build a computer. I may be able to do that soon. Maybe, I don't know. But just if you guys have ideas, just let us know.
And that number, by the way, is 660-474-0345. And I make sure that Google Voice number stays active and everything else. So just leave us a message. You could very well wind up on the next episode of the podcast. And hopefully we'll have some of our other co-hosts on, at least one of them next week. I'm trying to work that out with them, because one of the things in the pro wrestling business kind of tragedy kind of occurred, and a legend passed away, and I wanted to talk about him and everything else. I'm talking, of course, about Dusty Rhodes. If you remember, some guy dancing towards the ring wearing polka dots on his outfit. Yeah, that was him. And Steve Kelly, it's been a long time since he's been on the show. His work schedule, my work schedule, hasn't always allowed us to be on a show together. So trying to work something out with him, see what we can do on that. But I take it you've heard of Dusty Rhodes.
Yeah, I did. I did hear of his passing as well. I didn't know too much about him beforehand, because it had been so long since I've watched any wrestling. It was when I was younger, and just before middle school. I was still in grade school when I last watched wrestling. sister was still married. That was a long time ago. So I'd love to get back into it and revisit it. Now that I have the I don't know. I've got so many games piled up on my plate now that I don't know if I'll get to it, but I'll try it.
But yeah, that's those are among topics that I'm looking at in the future. But let us know. Entertain yourself, educate yourself, empower yourself. I'm Thomas.
And I'm Shaggy.
And we'll talk at you next week.
See you guys later.